Hi guys. Hello, I'm Pearl and this is Freedom number 2, my attempt to teach freedom during lockdown. And one of the things that is very important is our body. And so I wanted to address some questions, issues, truth, lies about our bodies and about body freedom and being free of a lot of the things that we tell ourselves about our bodies. Now, this is a really big one, so it may be longer than an hour, may well be longer than an hour, but we're going to do what we can today in about an hour. And one of the things that I've learned through studying with, all the great teachers and everything is that there's a paradox about our bodies. And as much of life, there is a paradox in terms of two things being true at the same time. And we have a difficulty, generally as human beings, accepting that two things that are opposites are true at the same time. Because we think logic is one thing being true, but actually the two things that are true about our bodies is that, one is that we're all connected, and none of us are separate. And the second thing that's true is that we each are responsible and own our own bodies. So my body is my body, your body is your body. But the paradox is that we're all connected as well. And for many people it's very confusing and difficult that because of who they are, how they are, that they can feel the connection with other people. Sometimes people call that being an empath, that we can actually feel other people's feelings. Don't worry if you don't believe that, and if you've not had that experience, that's okay. I'm sure that most of you will have heard at some time stories about twins feeling certain feelings and connections, and I've definitely had that with members of my family, where I can feel if one person's in pain, or when I've done something or been doing something, I know that, I've spoken to somebody afterwards and said, I could smell what you were smelling, I could feel what you were feeling, I could have a dream about something. It's a little bit disconcerting, because we kind of think, that all kinds of privacy issues come up, right? It's a bit embarrassing sometimes, so you think, oh my God. But I kind of learned to go with that, and learned to go with understanding more and more about what it means to be, say, an empath, or to feel sometimes so connected that we can feel when other people are suffering. And part of that as well is I keep coming back to this, I spent a long time studying healing and having all kinds of massage. What was very interesting for me was that I would often go and have a massage with a great healer, a great massage therapist. And as they were touching me, they could feel, and obviously there's a scientific element to this, purely like they could feel where there were knots in my body and things like that. But there were other times where it was like they could feel my pain when I couldn't feel it. So I had become so desensitized to my own emotions and pain that I couldn't actually feel what was going on for me emotionally and physically. I got used to certain things. And that's one of the things that does happen with pain a lot of the time, that we can just sort of start to ignore it sometimes in our own body. We get used to a certain niggling pain. And so sometimes another person can come in and can feel what we are not allowing ourselves to feel. And so for me, I experience it in a sense of this is a gift that a lot of healers possess. And what I have found is that probably since I've had great degrees of healing, I've sort of gone from being the person who's kind of numb and unawake to my own emotions and feelings and physical feelings, to becoming a person who's more sensitive of other people. And even before that, I had occasions when I would be feeling something somebody else was feeling, and sometimes we can be around somebody who's kind of going, excuse me, the classic thing of I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, but we can actually feel things that they're suppressing. So, that's a very, in terms of teaching body freedom, I have to address this paradox that we have already, And it's a tricky thing. It's a very tricky thing, and it's also very appropriate to talk about this in this moment, because again, we're talking about things that are about freedom, and about how we use our bodies, what we do with our bodies. And so very often we have a feeling of, hey, what I do to my body is my business. You know, if I want to drink, if I want to smoke, if I want to take drugs, if I want to behave recklessly, it's my choice. It's up to me, right? Because it's my body. But of course, there are other things that come into that equation, and we start to make rules of, no, it's not up to you. We start to make rules of, if this behaviour is affecting too many people around you, then that kind of behaviour can mean that you're restricted in certain ways. So, for example, if somebody is using drugs or behaving in a certain way, we might find that they lose their job. Or, they might have their children taken away from them. It's quite interesting. When I was in Bhutan, you see, in Bhutan there's a rule, which is that there's no smoking in Bhutan. And I've written about this in the books Courage and Truth. And of course the truth is that there is smoking in Bhutan. Yeah. Okay. And it's one of those things that the law is there's no smoking in Bhutan. But then you find that there's an awful lot of smoking that goes on in private and secret, indoors. And it often means that then you can't go to a bar or something like that because everybody's smoking inside. Because it's illegal to smoke outside. And similarly in France, when I lived in France in, the 90s, it was illegal to smoke in public in France. But every cafe you went to had ashtrays and everybody smoked outside, and everybody smoked. So the law was that you couldn't smoke, but everybody was smoking, and that was a big, big change. So when we're talking about body freedom, it's a very interesting at the moment in terms of having certain restrictions of what we can do with our bodies, certain things we're being asked not to do, and that's very important. But I want to go much deeper, I want to go much bigger. This is what gets a little bit nerve-wracking to do as well, because I'm going to talk about some very sensitive issues to do with our bodies and in terms of body freedom. And it's very interesting how much of how we label ourselves and we imprison ourselves is to do with what's going on here. Okay. And again, I'll come back to teachings. Actually, I won't go into the details of different teachers because, once I've studied a lot with different teachers, we come to certain understandings that are just very clear. And one is, am I male or am I female? Is it important if I'm male or if I'm female? And one of the things that I feel when I'm going out and I'm doing business things and all kinds of stuff is I'm not very keen on female groups. We're going to do this group for women and this group for women. And I'm not very keen on that because for me that feels kind of sexist. Don't like excluding people. I like inclusivity. And there's an awful lot going on in our world about gender. And a lot of debate, a lot of confusion, a lot of discussion. And there's a lot of ways of addressing that. So just a couple of questions that I would like to ask you or talk through, and things that I've learned to understand in myself. And the most basic thing is that all of us are created from male and female, an egg and a sperm. And there is no life without male and female. Yeah. So when I'm born, I've got a lot of stuff from my dad, a lot of stuff from my mum. That's so important. And one of the things for me that's incredibly a big part of my healing was coming to a place of being able to accept and reconcile all the parts of me that come from my dad and from my father's side. Sorry, it's a bit noisy. I'm trying to do this inside so it's a bit quieter. So in the book that I wrote called Reconciliation, what I realised is a lot of my journey was coming to a place where I could accept my feelings about my dad, because I was raised by a single mother. Now, I was very lucky because I had a lot of men in my life who are really incredible role models and people, and I appreciate that a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people may be raised in a culture with a lot of sex in them. They may not have strong female role models or strong male role models, and I'm very lucky to have had that. But despite that, I still had a big blockage in terms of accepting the parts of myself that were related to my father. And the only way for me to come through and to heal and to get to a place of actually being able to accept who I am was to be able to accept the male part of me. And that's so important, that I'm not judging myself or just accepting the parts of me that come from my mother. Why would I? You know, there is male and there is female. You know, and if you're a mother or a father and you have a child, you know, we are moving forward, I believe, we're evolving to a place that when a child is born, we don't have any hang-ups about whether we have a beautiful baby girl or we have a beautiful baby boy. Moving to a place where if we have a beautiful baby that may be even hermaphrodite, that has, you know, both male and female parts, we can love that child and accept that child exactly as they are. Get a bit noisy here. So, just the neighbours going. So we're moving to a place, I believe, we're moving to a place, evolving to a place where we can accept and love the male and female aspects of ourselves completely. There is no one better than the other. When my nieces and nephews were born, did I care if they were male or female? Did it make any difference at all to how much I loved them? Of course not. Of course not. We are healing, and we have a lot of healing to do. And I think most people have experienced some kind of sexism in their lives to a lesser and greater degree. And I was very lucky because I don't think I experienced a great deal of sexism from my family that much, because, you know, I think we were all kind of loved whatever sex we were, and I appreciate it's very difficult for people who grew up with parents who wanted them to be something other than what they were. That must be very difficult. And I probably shouldn't laugh about that. I mean, I laugh because it's a ridiculous situation, not because it's not painful. But I just remember that even in the 80s, you know, when I would go to a job fair, I remember talking to people who were recruiting for the RAF, and they said, okay, you can join the RAF, but there's 2 jobs you can't do. And one is you can't fly a plane, and the other one is you can't be in the band. And to be honest, if it had just been flying the plane, you know, I'd have thought, well, okay, maybe combat, you know, they don't want women in combat kind of thing. But you can't be in the band because it's meant to be, like, it doesn't look uniform if you've got some women in here. These things have probably changed quite a lot now. But yeah, I wasn't going to join any club that wasn't going to have me in the band. So anyway, so that's one way that we imprison ourselves by imprisoning ourselves within a concept of what is male and what is female. And yeah, you can see how I respect that. No respect for that. And another way we imprison ourselves is with the concept of race. Yep, let's talk about it. And there's so many ways of addressing this subject. And obviously this is quite a short video. And I'm very blessed to have travelled and to have experienced lots of different things. And I was going to talk about this thing. I watched this last night. I'll talk about this because I watched this last night. I watched this film called The Help. But I've read the book too. So I watched this film. And I won't go into too much detail, but you know, it's an interesting book, interesting film. But you know, just as I was saying about the male and the female come together, there is no child without male and female. And so one way of looking at this, what I found very interesting about this book and this film and the adaptation, and I kind of give away the ending here. Okay, so there's a kind of big secret in the book about what's happened to this white girl's maid. Where she disappeared to, what's going on. And in the book, when it comes out, one of the things that happens you hear about in the book before you get to that point is the black maid has a white father who loved her very much. And you hear about that in the book. Then it gets to the end, and the big secret that nobody wants to talk about is that the black maid had a daughter who was white. And because at that time in America, and again, it's very confusing because you're talking about something you think, I kind of understand it, I don't kind of understand it. What would be the point of this? The black maid had to give the white girl away to an orphanage because it was too difficult to... So in order to go and work for a white family and raise a white child, she had to give away for adoption her own white child because none of the other black families could look after this white child because it was too difficult. And that kind of, that's all kind of paradoxes in there. And then in the book, what happens is that she finally finds the daughter again. She comes back, but the lady of the house, the mother of the white girl, who's, how confusing is this? So the woman who owns the house, who employs the black maid, she doesn't know the daughter, she doesn't recognise the daughter. So when the daughter comes in, and she's behaving in a certain way with all these other white girls and this thing, she is acting as if she belongs. She's acting as if, hey, I'm going to join this. I'm as good as anybody else. And of course you can't behave that way. And so the maid gets fired. No, the mother sends the daughter away and says, right, you can't have anything to do with her. And of course the black maid says, no, I'm going with my daughter because I gave her up once and I'm not giving up her again. But what I found quite interesting is when I was watching this film, they changed it. And for me, it felt kind of strange that this sort of big, almost a secret about a lot of people in America is that, there are a lot of white people who had relationships with black people, who had children, and that it just, the secrecy and the confusion and the lying and the shame and the embarrassment, so many things. And I think it's really a kind of a thing sometimes of, well, if you have a broken system and one person starts behaving in a way that supports the broken system, then it all falls apart. But what I found really interesting was that they chose not to include that in the film. And for me, that was a very important part of the book because it was talking about the hypocrisy, really, the hypocrisy of the time. So I there's a very nice film, very well made, but to me it just lost a big part of what the book was about. So, anyway, for me, when I travelled to South Africa, I learned a lot, and I learned talking to people who lived there, and from the stories and the work of Nelson Mandela and people like that, who I keep coming back to. And I was very blessed to go to a place called Maripeng, which is the cradle of life, and it's where many people believe that we all came from. All human beings came from there. When you go there, you can buy many, many t-shirts that will have a thing that says, we are all Africans. We are all Africans. I'm just a very pale-skinned African. So, but the difficulty is that, for a lot of people, their identity is based on what colour skin they have. And for me, I just, in terms of talking about truth and freedom, when I was in South Africa, I had a deep, deep, profound realization of how unimportant skin colour is. And this morning I watched a video, it was posted by Sadhguru, a very famous Indian guru. And it was a tribute to all the healthcare workers around the world working on this to protect us against this virus, and all the other people working. And I do respect this teacher very much, and I thought it was a beautiful, although very painful film to watch. And as I watched it, all the workers, all the nurses, all the doctors, everybody like that, all colours, all races. Does it matter? And it's painful sometimes when we see how much trouble we give ourselves with these forms of identification and this idea of who we are. And the way I always think about it, and I want to finish talking about identity in that sense and move on to some other things, because we could talk about this all day. These are very deep questions, but at the same time, then they're not that complicated, because we know that this disease is no respecter of nationality, of religion, of race. And I could have a very heavy heart about that. So I want to just talk about 1-2 things, and then we'll move on to some other stuff about body freedom. And some of you will know that I gave a kidney to my brother, which was a really interesting experience. And because of that, or whatever, I'm also on the donor list for, if I have an accident, I'm donating my organs to whoever. And I think that's a beautiful thing to do. I'm also on other donation lists for, if somebody needs some bone marrow or something like that. There's a list you can go on where you register your DNA. Whatever. Might be a dangerous thing to do. You don't have to do it. But to register as an organ donor, all you have to do is go onto a website. You don't have to carry a donor card anymore. And when you look at organ donation, it's an incredible miracle of science that we are able to donate parts of our bodies to other people. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. What other animal has learned how to... And anytime somebody says anything negative about humanity, I always think, what other animal has found a way to give each other their organs, to give each other their blood? How amazing are we? And I think you know where I'm going with it. That if you had an accident, and you were in a car and you had an accident, and you went to the hospital, and the nurses and the doctors were trying to save your life, and they were screaming out, we need to give this person some blood, we need to give this person a blood transfusion. They wouldn't be calling for black blood, or Chinese blood, or female blood, or older blood, or younger blood. It wouldn't be that, would it? What would they ask for? Could we have some O negative blood, please? Can we have some O negative blood to give to this person? Unless we know their blood group. And the only thing that matters in that situation is somebody's blood group. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu always says, when he was teaching about, how ridiculous it was to give people rights according to the colour of their skin, he said, well, what if we gave, because he has quite a big nose, he says, what if we have a big nose tribe? What if we have a small nose tribe? What if we had a blue eye tribe, a brown eye tribe? What if we have a tall tribe and a short tribe? And you think about how many times we categorise ourselves based on whether we're tall or whether we're short, if we have blonde hair or brown hair or red hair. How crazy, how stupid it is that we would categorise ourselves by something that would really make no difference, or really should make no difference, when we arrive in a hospital needing care. And I just want to share one more thing. One of my great teachers, as you know, is Don Miguel Ruiz, and he had a little problem with his heart. A little problem in that his heart was no longer working properly. And it's quite funny when I saw him, when I met him, we had a chat, and I was talking about giving a kidney, and he's had a heart transplant. So we were comparing the scars, and the experience. And it's not a secret, it's in his books, and it's one of his beautiful books, and I think the book is dedicated, there's a dedication within the book, to the person who donated a heart to Don Miguel Ruiz. And I'm pretty sure it was a young girl who died, and her heart was donated, and he received it because he was top of the list. So he might be walking around looking like a man of a certain age, a certain skin colour, but he has a heart. He has a heart that came from a woman, came from a young girl. So what does that make us? Does that mean that we have to be defined by these things? And I think that's a place, if you have an issue with this, I think maybe take some time to think about these questions. And I've spent, for some reason, I've had some interesting experiences, and I don't want to spend too long about this because I want to talk about some other things, but it's very interesting that I have a lot of friends who have been rejected because of the colour of their skin. I have friends who have dual heritage, and they may have a white parent and a black parent. And they've struggled with that. They've had difficulty in our society and our culture because of the way that they're judged. And they have a difficulty with being accepted more or less by certain parents and certain family because of the colour of their skin. And they have a lot of healing to do. And it's very difficult because some of it is healing from, lies. It's all healing from lies, but some of those lies are still being acted out. And I just talk very, very briefly about this because probably one of the reasons that we talk about this kind of subject, with certain friends and things like that, is because my name is Pearl. And if you're in America, Pearl is a very basic standard name. It doesn't really denote anything. But in England, it seems to be perceived as a black or an Asian name. And so when I left university and I started sending out CVs to places, I sent out 100 letters and I did not get one interview. And then I walked into a recruitment office and I got an interview and I got a job. And I will also say about that company, there are a lot of people of different races working in and associated with them. So what was quite funny is I was working in film and production, and people are always saying, there's not enough representation of black and Asian people in production, in film productions like that. And I was thinking, this is really strange. I don't really agree with this because, everybody who hires me is black or Asian. Or their wife is, And then at a certain point, I kind of realised, I thought, oh, these are the only people that give me an interview. Oh, I see. So there was a thing where I realised that the perception of me through my name is that I'm black or Asian, which is interesting. And also I've had a lot of phone interviews with people. And when I turned up for the actual, second interview, the sort of thing, they were quite surprised that I was white. And I know they were quite surprised that I was white because they said, "You're not black." And I went, "Okay, yeah, I get that." And sometimes I got hired anyway, and sometimes I didn't. I mean, it's so crazy, right? It's ridiculous, right? And this actually carried on even when I was teaching Zumba, and I had people come to class and they would say to me afterwards, they say, I only came to your class because I saw your name and I thought you were black. But you're okay, you can dance okay. I'm going to come back to your class next week. And it wasn't just once that this happened. It's happened quite a lot of times to me. So, yeah, kind of crazy, right? And I just want to share one more story about how crazy and stupid this whole perception and assumptions about who we are and what we are is that when I lived in Paris and I was trying to get a job, and again my CV was going out and it was finding it very difficult to get a job. And then I got a job in an office, and I was working in this office. It was a really rubbish job, I have to say. So anyway, and then one day I went into the break room, and everybody had all this food. It was everywhere. Food was everywhere. And I said, wow, what's this? And they said, oh, it's such and such. And I went, what's that? And they went, aren't you Jewish? And I was like, no. And they all looked at me like, and I suddenly realised that I'd been hired into this company because my name was Pearl. My name is Pearl. And they thought I was Jewish. So they kept me. But it's a strange thing when we make assumptions, about who and what we are, whether we think we're male or female. And there's a reason why a lot of writers go under a pen name, and they pretend that a lot of female writers will write under a male name, And I never really thought to write under a pen name. And I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I wouldn't have liked to have asked myself that question of, should I change my name so I appear to be something that I'm not? Or change my name so I appear to be what I am instead of appearing what I am not? Complicated. But it's not really, is it? I mean, really. We're just people. We're all just people. It's very confusing. But it's not confusing. It's the paradox. So anyway, I'm glad we've talked about these things, because I think these are quite big questions and they're important. And I think that if these are concepts that are holding you back, then there obviously some healing needs to be done in that area, of how we think about ourselves. And so what I want to talk about is some other aspects of how we judge ourselves and imprison ourselves in terms of our bodies. And some of it may connect and feedback as well. I just remembered I forgot to ask, may I have your permission to teach you? I think I'm going to write it in the bit at the top of YouTube, so that, so one of the other things that I've been doing for quite a while is trying to eat. I say I'm a practicing vegan. I try and eat vegan, and it's amazing how many people will label themselves. The identity is I'm vegan. I'm vegan. Or vegetarian. And when we were growing up, my mum tried to raise us as vegetarians, but it just really got too difficult at a certain point. And she decided, you know what, I give up, I can't do this. And I think that's probably true of a lot of people who are trying to be vegan, that sometimes it's easier and harder. And one thing I would say right now, at the risk of angry vegans approaching me, because it's happened before, and I'm sure it'll happen again, is that I personally would say cut yourself some slack right now. We're going through an incredibly difficult time, and for a lot of us, we eat what we get. We're lucky to have the food that we have. A lot of us are lucky to have enough food to eat, particularly at the moment. And if it's a choice that you want to make to eat a certain way, I'm trying to make that too. And I respect myself for trying to do that, because it's what I want to do, it's what I choose to do. But when I first kind of decided to be vegan, the first thing I thought was, I want to be vegan. And the second thought was, I can't do that, that's too difficult. So I made the choice to just do my best. To just do my best to be vegan. And if I have days when I don't quite make it, if I have days when I eat something that's not vegan, and sometimes I eat something that's not vegan accidentally. Sometimes I end up eating vegan accidentally, because I'm not paying too much attention to it. I'm not focused 100% on that. I can't give any more energy to trying to eat a certain way. I'm not choosing to base my self-respect on that. And I think that's one of the things that I'm seeing at the moment, because I follow an awful lot of people on things like Instagram and Facebook, or have done. And I have fitness friends, I have vegan friends, I have, because this stuff interests me when I'm trying out different things. And the response to the present moment often makes me unfollow people at the moment, particularly in fitness. I've had to unfollow so many people on Instagram because all they keep showing me is their butt or their bottom. And it's, okay, let me show you this exercise on Instagram. Okay, let me show you how my diet's going. Okay, let's see. I can't do it. I just, no, sorry. Because I don't really give a crap about your butt right now. I mean, honestly, I really don't give a crap. I don't give a crap if you gain 6 pounds. I don't give a crap if you put back on a bit of the weight that you lost through your healthy eating plan. I don't give a crap if you want to sell me teas, herbal teas, or candles, or weight loss programs, or anything really in this moment. Or most of the time, to be frank. It, to me, is, inappropriate at a time when we all need to be taking care of ourselves and the whole community. And there's a very beautiful quote, I'll try and say it right, that was on one of my teachers, they spread it around, it's kind of good. It says, if all you did today was hold yourself together, that's enough. So when I go on somebody who I like, who's a friend of mine, I see a thing and it's like, no excuses, you have to do your workout today, you have to do 100%, you have to do this. I think, no you don't. No you don't. And one of the things about me that maybe maybe a lot of people don't know is I'm a bereavement counsellor, I'm a life coach, I've been a mentor for carers. And I've also had a lot of experience of PTSD. And we are going through a trauma right now. Globally, we are going through a trauma. And a lot of people are grieving. A lot of people are in shock, or even in denial. And if you've done any first aid, and I'm also a first aid trainee? No, not trainer. I've been trained in first aid. Shock is a very important state and a very dangerous state. And shock can be caused by loss of fluid, it can be caused by all kinds of external things, and it can also be caused by emotion, by trauma. And it's very dangerous. And so one of the things we have to do at the moment is to be really careful of our own bodies and be aware that our capability is changing from day to day. We are not the same person we were yesterday or last week or last month. We may not be able to stick to some kind of diet. We may not be able to do some kind of fasting. Fasting is respected in many cultures, but it is something that also needs to be undertaken wisely. Okay? And so many of us may not be able to do the same amount of physical effort, exercise that we have been doing, because we may be experiencing low energy or shock or depression. We may experience all kinds of things. Now is not the time to take a fitness routine or a fitness program and use it as a stick to beat yourself with, because life is difficult enough already. And so I'm teaching online, I'm teaching my fitness program, I'm teaching Zumba. And I always say, take it at your own pace. Be kind to yourself. Enjoy it. And one of the beautiful things in India, in Indian spiritual practice, is doing what they call a puja. I hope I say it right. It's P-U-J-A. Doing a puja for your body. And that means doing something beautiful and healing for your body. So it could be drinking some herbal tea. It could be taking a really nice long shower. It could be having a bubble bath. It could be lighting a candle and smelling the beauty. It could be sitting in the garden and listening to all the sounds and the beautiful smells. It could be making a beautiful meal and eating it. It could be making some bread. Apparently everybody's making bread and putting pictures online. But whatever we do for our body right now, I would advise, I would recommend, I would teach to think about whatever you're doing for your body as a puja. So, kind of a worship of this beautiful temple. My body is a temple. And think about how we treat that body. That body is a temple. Do we treat it by standing in front of the mirror as if we stand in front of a temple and go, oh, it's not very good today. Oh, I don't know about that. Oh, could you lose a few pounds? Yeah, shape here, look at that butt. No. Or do we look at this beautiful temple and do we say, I had a thing I thought this morning in the garden, which was so beautiful, which was, today is a good day because I'm alive. And I was really struggling this morning, and I could hear all the birds singing, and I thought, what are the birds singing? What are the birds trying to tell me? I was like, today is a good day because I'm alive, because my heart is beating, because I'm breathing. And so let me honor this body. Let me honor this beautiful, perfect temple, and eat to nurture myself, to exercise to support myself, to sleep to support myself, to take a nice long shower, all those things I talked about, to do a puja for my body, and to just hug myself if I need to. We don't need to use all these rules, I have to lift a heavier weight today than I did yesterday. No, not necessarily. Rest and recovery is very important. And we are, as I keep saying, we are mind, body and spirit. Sorry, my feet got a bit tight. I don't sit cross-legged for very often, for very long, Sometimes I do. But I'm not in the habit of trying to, sit in a way that's uncomfortable to me because somebody tells me to. That would be silly. Oh, and that brings me on to another point. So again, talking about exercise, talking about spirituality, mind, body, spirit. Now sometimes we can do something which is a healing for the body and for the mind, body and spirit, but might feel difficult. So sometimes we can feel a bit creaky, sometimes I do a little yoga and I go, oh yeah, I can feel it in there. But I know that it's kind of loosening something up. I know when I stretch, I think, but I know it's kind of good for me and it feels quite good. I know that sometimes I eat my vegetables, even if I'm really not feeling like I want to eat my vegetables. Especially at the moment. And that's a different thing to really beating myself up over my diet or not eating the biscuit because I just am restricting myself. I probably eat too many biscuits at the moment, but I'm finding that's kind of helping me through, so I'm okay with that. I'm okay with, not being, I'm okay with if I get a little bit fat and my butt is a bit big. I'm happy with that. There are a lot bigger problems in the world. And I would just say right now, I'm not somebody who's ever had an eating disorder. So I'm very much aware that if you've had an eating disorder, this can be a very dangerous and difficult time for you. And once again, I would say, please, also for people who have got other kinds of addictions, so alcohol addiction, there is a lot at the moment about how people are struggling with these kind of problems and addictions. And I would say, actually Zumba has been shown to help people and actually, healthy exercise programs and good exercise programs have been shown to help people with addiction. And I say, don't take my word for it, go and check it out. And right now you can actually do classes with some of the best teachers in the world. Some of the most amazing teachers in the world are going online every day and sharing stuff. And that's really great. But I wanted to just touch on something, and I'm not trying to single out yoga in this, just to be aware. But I want to talk about this because it highlights how we can take something that's very beautiful and supportive and helpful, something that's really good, and we can make it into a prison. We can make it into something we use to beat ourselves up with. And so a couple of years back, I remember reading about this and studying this as well. And I know that when I was teaching full-time Zumba, I often taught too much, too hard. I often did things and I had a couple of injuries because I was overtraining and I was over-practicing. And I would say, if you're a teacher of anything like Zumba or something like that, be very wary of the number of times you repeat a particular track or a particular move. Because, sometimes you watch these films and it's like, Step Up or some dance thing, and you see people, dancers practicing the same routine over and over, again. That's how you get injuries in your body. And I did that, I started out and I was training, I was practicing. And so I would do the same routine over and over and over again. And then, of course, I tore muscles. So if you're doing something like that, I would just say, if you want to practice a dance routine or a similar move, I would say try and do it about 3 times, in a row, and then leave it. Because otherwise you will strain a muscle. That's not something we want right now. And a lot of people have had to take time off from teaching because they've overdone it and they've strained their bodies. And as a teacher, it's very important that we respect our workout and what we're doing as well, that it serves us as well as all the other people around us. And there was a big thing in when yoga, a lot of yoga went to the West, and a lot of yoga teachers in America were holding poses, and it was the ego getting in there saying, oh yeah, I must hold this pose for longer each time. And a lot of yoga teachers were getting injuries, and then they would have to go and have surgery to correct the problem. Same thing with dancers. Dancers are very prone to injury because we overdo it. We forget the wisdom of trusting our body and listening to our bodies, and we think that we have to kind of go through certain things. And I've talked in the past about going through certain limits and boundaries, but if we do that, we have to do it with great caution. We do something for the first time when we go, we have to, if you're running a marathon, it takes a great deal of care and preparation for most people. So, and that's just going to lead on to the final thing I want to talk about. And so one of the things we're talking about is just respecting what we need right now and not hurling ourselves against our limits. And again, it's one of those things when we talk about freedom, a lot of people think that means somebody, there's this kind of, these weird concepts that get in our head, like from training and personal growth and stuff. It's like, I have to climb Mount Everest, or I have to, just go for a nice walk, when we can, if you can. And so we kind of take something that's meant to be good for us and meant to be helpful and healing, and we create a prison where we say we have to do it to this extent, to that extent. It's okay, One of the ways of describing the Buddhist way of life is the middle way, that we kind of stay in the middle. We don't go to extremes. And I want to just finish on one more thing. It's actually related to yoga and to spiritual teachers, and also to the 60s and to the hippie movement. And there's a very famous yoga teacher, actually quite a few sort of spiritual teachers who have come under the spotlight for very bad reasons, for taking advantage of their students. Because obviously as a teacher, very often people are in a position of power, a position of trust. And so sometimes it comes out that these teachers have taken advantage of students in terms of sex, in terms of harassment, in terms of using that position to, and this is like teachers around the world, sometimes teachers take advantage of their students. which we really don't think is a good idea, right? I guess we all agree that's probably a bad idea. And I would say right now that there are some teachers who teach celibacy, some teachers who teach open relationships, who might think it's appropriate to have sexual relationships with their students because it's kind of what they're teaching. Kind of interesting thing. And it's interesting if we think about boundaries and in terms of this is my body and that's your body. I choose what happens, I choose what I want to do with my body. I choose how I want to behave with my body. My body belongs to me. And even now there are still cultures around the world where for a lot of people they're not treated as if their body belongs to them. So we can talk about modern slavery, we can talk about cultures where people are seen as the property of their husband or their father, and it's not their choice who they marry, it's not their choice who has sex with them. And that's something that we obviously need to heal around the world. But I wanted to just touch on this because there was a concept in the 60s, which was the free love concept. And unfortunately, this concept of freedom and me being free in my body can also be abused in the sense of, hey guys, we're all hanging out, we're all free. You gotta have sex with me. Because if you don't, you're a prude. If you don't, you're not getting with the program. If you don't, you're not really cool. And right now, there are some people do not have a choice. Some people do not have the freedom. And I hope that changes very, very soon. And some of us have a really strong sense of freedom in terms of, I'm going to do with my body what I want, But I'm going to respect, I'm not going to run down the street naked yet. But then in this kind of, I would say, almost like a middle ground, in a negative way, are people who are pressured to do something with their body that they don't want to do. And that's a huge area. And I'm only going to touch on it very briefly because, I've got other things I want to do. And so I'm sure you do too. So a lot of people are being pressured by other people. We have peer pressure. We have people being pressured to hurt other people. We have people being pressured to wear makeup they don't want to wear, to lighten their skin, to change their hair from what it is naturally, because of some kind of expectation, some kind of idea of what's right and what's wrong, what looks good and what doesn't. We have a huge expectation about what kind of size somebody should be, what kind of exercise somebody should do. And a lot of people feel pressured. I should be this way. I should have this size boobs. I should be this height. I shouldn't wear heels. Or I should wear heels so I look taller. Or I should dress a certain way. And I would just leave that with you in terms of questioning everything that you are being told right now about what you wear, how you behave, who you get with, why you get with them, or not. Maybe you want to do something with your body and you feel pressured not to do it. And you can see where I'm going with this. This body freedom is about recognizing what is personal choice in relation to my body? What is responsibility in relation to my body? What are the lies that I've been told about what I can and cannot do because of the way somebody else might label my body? And these are really, really big and important questions, because if you just take a second and think about all the many, many people who have broken the mould, who have said, no, I'm going to do this even though I'm a woman. No, I'm going to do this even though I'm a man. No, I'm going to do this even though I'm older than anyone says I should do this at this age. I'm going to do this even though people say I'm too young. I'm going to do this even though people say I'm the wrong skin colour. I'm going to do this even though somebody says I'm the wrong race. I'm going to do this even though I'm blind. I'm going to do this even though I'm deaf. I'm going to do this even because I have, and I will end with this, I climbed a pyramid in Mexico with an amazing man. And he finally got to the top. And I thought he was having difficulty just because he was a little unfit. And they said to him at the top, they said, oh, so tell us about this. And he said, well, when I lost my leg a couple of years ago, I never thought, we were like, this man climbed it with one leg. It was hard to do, with two legs. And then I went to Bhutan. I remember I was standing on the queue to get on the plane. And Bhutan is a lot of hard climbs, lots of places. And I saw this guy's backpack, and it was like he was part of a sporting association. And it was like prosthetics, And I looked down, and I saw that he had two fake legs. And I thought, well, I'm climbing mountains in Bhutan with a guy with two prosthetic legs. And he's just going to do it, So just really, the second lesson I'm trying to teach you here is to understand and to become free in your own body and learn what a precious, precious gift this is. And not to let anybody else tell you that you're not good enough because of something to do with your body. Not to tell you that you have to punish or torture yourself to look like anybody else or to lose some weight or anything, especially in this moment. And just love yourself, love yourself, love yourself. And I can't think of anything better to teach than that. So, thank you so much. And I hope you have a most beautiful day. It's Easter Sunday today. And thank you for being with me. And I hope this helps. Lots of love. And now excuse me as I have to go and be my own cameraman because I'm on my own. As so many of us are. Lots and lots of love. Thank you.